Louis Caldera joins us now. He's an adjunct professor of law at American University. Louis, really great to have you with us. The president and his campaign, his re-election campaign, have basically said that they're going to very legally aggressively pursue those mail-in ballots that are received after Election Day in the battleground state of Pennsylvania. How do you think they'll do that?
The president is so far behind, not just in the national polls, but in a lot of these battleground states, that he's basically decided that the only chance he has of winning is to try to keep the votes from being counted in places where Democrats are counting votes. And I want to just speak to the lead-in to your piece in which you showed businesses being boarded up and guns being purchased. All of this is due to Donald Trump's talk about the only way that he could lose this election is violence, his refusal to do anything about guns, and in fact encouraging people to purchase guns, and the kind of disinformation and interference that Russia and Iran and others are fomenting, saying that if Trump loses, then you should go into the streets and you should do violence because the election was stolen. That's just a terrible message for a president to send, but it shows you the lengths to which he'll go to, because that kind of message is actually intended to intimidate people, to keep them from voting, from saying, "Well, I better not vote against Trump."
Louis, I respect that you have a political opinion on this, but right now I'm asking for your legal analysis on how the president may challenge this legally, from a legal standpoint, and what impact that could have on the outcome of the election.
Absolutely. So it's part and parcel of the same thing. What they will, because we're in the middle of a pandemic, states have tried to expand the use of mail-in ballots in order so that people don't have to go to the polls and expose themselves to the virus, and to use things like drop boxes so they don't even have to count on the U.S. Postal Service to return those ballots. There are different deadlines in every single state about when those ballots must be voted by Election Day, when they must be received, whether they must be received by Election Day or whether they only have to be postmarked by Election Day and received sometimes 7 days, sometimes 10 days, in some states as much as 20 days after the election, as long as they were cast by election date. In some states, those deadlines have been moved by the legislature. In other states, they've been moved by election commissions. In other states, they've been moved under the state constitution by state courts. That creates the possibility that the Trump lawyers will come into those states and say, don't count any ballot received after the deadline, whatever that deadline is, even though the voters voted believing that the deadline had been extended, and that they'll go argue to the federal courts, regardless of what state law says or how a state court may rule on the matter, that they'll argue to a federal court that those votes should be thrown out. So they're trying to literally
Louis, I have about
tens of thousands of votes.
I have about 30 seconds left of our segment. Before we have to move on. I just want to get your take on what if this does, in fact, find its way to the U.S. Supreme Court, given the fact that it's now more heavily conservative leaning with the recent confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett.
People have said that she should recuse herself from deciding any of these cases because Trump has made it clear he expects her to vote for him on these cases, and judges should avoid conflicts of interest and even the appearance of conflicts of interest. So she should recuse herself from deciding any of these cases. The court lost legitimacy because of its decision in Bush v. Gore. It should allow the state courts to decide these cases.
All right, Louis Caldera, we really appreciate your analysis. Thanks for being with us.